Welcome to the Priority Lane podcast. I'm your host, Lawrence Dauncey. This is the podcast where we discover how to work smarter, not harder. And I'm very, very pleased to welcome my next guest to the studio, Helena Bogdanovski from Foster Denovo. Helena is head of private wealth there, and she's going to have some insights into her career and what the business has been working on recently. So I'm delighted to welcome Helena. How are you doing?
Thanks, Lawrence. How are you?
I'm extremely well. Now, I'm going to just kick this straight off.
Okay.
You are already a seasoned podcast host. Is that right?
It is. Why did you go there first,
Well,
Lawrence?
because I wanted to just give you a little prod and find out how you're feeling being on the other side.
Not well would be my direct response. So I'm very much used to doing the questions and the
Okay.
asking, and generally in that and in life being in control. So this is kind of not my happy space right now.
Okay.
So yes, so that's how I'm feeling.
Well, rest easy. Honestly, this is very, very simple, and I will go easy on you, of course. Um, Now, when we spoke a couple of weeks back, I always ask the guests, what their first experience of work or, job was.
hmm
And I was intrigued to see that you worked in stable yards and payment was, in fact, being given the opportunity to ride the horses that you tended to. That's right.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. So my first question on that is, how do you feel now about having an activity as payment rather than financial uh, winnings?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I was like 12, so I was delighted with the situation. I mean, I was your typical sort of, I know if I can say that, but sort of girl that wanted a horse and we couldn't afford a horse and all that sort of stuff. And there were stable yards down the road. And frankly, it wouldn't be allowed nowadays, would it? Because you might call it sort of child labour. But effectively what they did, and bear in mind, this is 35 years ago, all right, Lawrence? So let's set the time frame. They said, oh, look, come and work for us and basically muck out the horses and your payment is to ride them. And we were like, nailed it. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? We thought we'd absolutely made it. There was about 8 of us that did it. And we thought it was great. And sort of looking back on it, you're like, it's great because your parents didn't have to look after you on a Saturday. So they were delighted with it. The kids were delighted because they were like, we're riding horses for free. You sort of forget that you're doing manual labor for the sort of the joy of it.
Mhm.
And the stables were like, well, this is fantastic. So kind of a win-win everywhere, basically.
It's just a shame that that sort of work methodology wouldn't work now, would it?
No, I mean, absolutely not. I mean, health and safety for starters. I mean, God knows what would happen, right?
You can't pay
Um,
your mortgage by cutting a hedge or
I would
mucking.
love that.
Wouldn't that be good?
That would be delightful. I'll check
May-
if Santander will do that for me.
Maybe we should start something new.
Yeah, I like it.
This is how we go. So after that, listen, you also mentioned that you moved into recruitment. Is that right?
Yeah, so I did the typical, well, it's not typical now, but it was then, A levels, uni, crikey, what do I do now? I'll do recruitment because my mate sort of went to me, well, you're good at talking to people. And I went, yeah, all right. And then off you go. And you're sort of 20 years old, aren't you, working in London? And that's how you started. And I've been in recruitment ever since because I still head up talent acquisition here as well. But yeah, so it's been a theme throughout my whole life.
Okay. And when did the financial services sector kind of spark your interest, or did that organically happen, or did you
Yeah,
actively?
I would say it was sort of organic. I mean, my first ever role was in secretarial recruitment in the city, so
Okay.
in Moorgate, and you were recruiting for the big banks. So it was Goldman, RBS, etc., etc. I mean, we're talking, Lawrence. I was thinking about this morning as I was walking to work. We shared a computer. We were faxing CVs, okay, and we had all of our data on a Rolodex.
Yeah, love a
Right?
Rolodex and a
Yeah.
fact.
And I think, when I talk to people nowadays and like you just remember stuff, right? Like that's just your nature. And they're like, sorry, let me just check. And I'm like, how do you not know this? Because when we were trained, you knew everyone's details, you knew what was happening, you were yeah. So, but because we were sort of working with banking, I've always been around it. So it's always been sort of stuff that I knew. And then I slowly moved out of recruitment agencies and then I moved into on-site. So I moved to RBS. And then after that, I moved to Santander. And then I did a stint in Barclays as well. At that point, it was sort of where I was used to.
I see. Did you do any of the financial advisor qualifications, or how have you progressed in terms of training that way?
No, none,
Right. Okay.
none
So
whatsoever.
so your role as, head of private wealth at Foster Denovo, tell me a little bit about that. How did that come about?
Yeah, I mean, that is, I suppose, the biggest career turn that I've done. And I'd just like to correct you, it's director of private wealth, Lawrence. Um, um, so I sort of finished, I was the head of exec recruitment for Santander and ran that
Okay.
division. And then I came out of it and I thought, do you know what, actually? I don't want to do banking anymore. I want to try other things. So I went and did some contract work. And then I got a role at Foster Denovo, and it was contract, and it was literally recruiting self-employed and employed financial advisors.
Okay.
And I thought, well, I know wealth management. I've dealt with it in Barclays. I went through RDR in Santander, all of that sort of stuff. So I knew it. I'd run FPMs. And so all of that world, I sort of thought, oh, well, I know this. And then coming into it and recruiting for it was a whole different ball game. But I sort of said to Roger, who's my CEO, I said, look, this isn't really, it's not a big enough job for me. Like, I'm used to quite big jobs. And he sort of just went, well, just, do what you're used to. And it sort of went from there. So I was recruiting self-employed and employed advisors, but it's quite a lonely role. So what I became the sort of linchpin for them within the organisation. So they would come to me for everything. So then I started supporting them. Then I started looking at their loan agreements. Then I started looking at their books of business. Then I started doing some sales training with them, and it just sort of grew and grew and grew. And I took a sort of, I suppose that was the turning point, like a segue where Helen, who's the MD, and Roger said, look, it's director of private wealth now. You're running the gig. This is what you're doing. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it's sort of, when it sort of happens organically
Yeah.
and then you sort of get the title and they're like, and I was sort of a bit like imposter syndrome, what's happening? And they said, well, you're doing it. And I was like, oh, so I suppose I am really. Do you know what I mean? So, and I think that was one of the biggest challenges I've probably had is running, I've got 91 advisors, employed, and acquisition. So I manage all of them. The average age is, 54. I mean, it's coming down, which is great news.
And
And then I'm here.
it was 58.
I know. So we're getting there. It's slow and steady wins the race at the moment. But I sort of thought, goodness, how am I going to be telling these guys that have been doing it for 30 years
Yeah.
what to do and how to do it? And why are they going to listen to me? And I think it's just through relationships and, who you are as a person and being really honest and transparent with people that it just works. I mean, I was thinking about this. I've got advisors that phone me up and they're over 60 and they're like, oh, I just wanted to talk to you, boss. And I'm like, right. And they were like, I've just done a whole of life case, it's this. And I was like, okay, well done. And they were like, I just wanted to let you know. And I'm like, how has this happened? But it has, and I love it.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah,
great. So you've been at Foster Denovo for how long now?
gosh, I think it's about 8.5 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's quite a quick, I think, transition from, entering the company to becoming director
Thank
of
you very much. Well noted. Yeah,
pleasure.
no, absolutely. I mean, I sit on the leadership team. I now sit on the exec team as well. Yeah, and when I talk to sort of my friends and colleagues who are in recruitment or L&D and that side of stuff where I've come from, it's quite a rare move that somebody moves out of the recruitment space or talent acquisition or whatever we want to call it and into a much more commercial role. It doesn't tend to happen that way. So I think I'm a bit of an outlier, but it's only testament really to Foster Denovo and what they saw in me and how they thought this could work. And that's
So,
kind of how we are really.
so it's obvious for me, what you've described shows an immense amount of, I think, self-awareness and drive to get stuff done, which is, I think old school. You know what I'm talking about.
I do.
And I just wanted to, ask you. You've obviously been given a great platform, and I think the space to move forward, develop, etc. Have there been? Have you had any mentors in the past, or at Foster Denovo that have really given you a springboard at all?
Yeah, I mean, I would say probably two. I would say my first ever boss, who was brilliant. I'm still friends with her now. We just came back from holiday. And she was really, really good because it was, I'd come out of uni. I was all sort of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And she sort of taught me how things work. And it was in an era where you worked really hard and you were rewarded for what you did. Do you know what I mean? Your commission-based, all of that sort of stuff. But also the value and ethics behind recruitment and being honest and all of that. I mean, she was fantastic. And I would say my boss now, who's Helen, who's the MD, she is really, really good at developing, and she'll tell me off when I need to, and that happens a fair amount, Lawrence. But she'll praise you, she'll back you. Do you know what I mean? And I think I've learned an incredible amount from both of those, and they just both happen to be women as well. So
Well, all power to it. And obviously on the back of that mentorship that you've received, do you offer the same to your team?
I do. And I think I have a really eclectic team, I would say, right? And I learnt this when you first start sort of managing and then leading people. You sort of have to learn that diversity is key, right? Because if everyone's built the same as you, and you're taught about unconscious bias and all this sort of stuff and all that in recruitment, but if you don't have people that are different to you, you're just going to run into the same problems, And I struggled with that when I first started managing people, because I go somewhere really fast. So I'll get to the end of a problem quite quickly, but other people work differently. And I
Yeah.
hadn't quite worked that out. Some people are much more analytical. A lot of people like to do the research. Some people are detailed based, whereas I'm like, come on now, what's the
Right.
answer? And I think that's put me in really good stead, because I've got people on my team that do people development for my advisors. I've got people that are more compliance based or super technical. I've got MI guys, I've got data analysts, etc. And they all work differently, but they all complement each other and what we do. And that's the way to get a good team. And so that's how I try and lead them, that you have to lean into what your strengths are and pull away from what you're not good at. I'm not good at detail. Everyone knows it. Somebody opens a spreadsheet, I might black out. I don't know, right? It's just not my strength. But I've
Do
got
you
people
find
in the team that do that. And I think that's how you have to develop people, to lean into what they're good at and stay away from what you're not good at. There's somebody else in the business that will do that for you.
Yeah, no, understood. No, that makes sense. But obviously, your experience within recruitment has given you that skill set to be able to identify the right individuals to build a team. I imagine that's not a quick process, though. Is it? Does it take a while to actually build the team? Do you feel that you need to have maybe some recruitment experience in order to really get the best out of people?
It's recruitment. I mean, to be honest with you, Lawrence, most of my team have come from internally. So
Okay.
as my role has developed, and I'm just, I sort of see something over there and I think, well, I'd quite like to be involved in that. And then they're like, well, actually, this person works on that aspect. So, I've got a chap in my team that looks after consumer duty and fees and proposition. And I was like, I think that should probably sit within my team. I'm like, great. So I've sort of inherited him. So I've inherited quite a lot of people, which is an interesting way of doing it, because they might not always be the people that you would actually choose for your team.
Okay.
But once you start working with them, you go, I get it. It makes sense. You make sense to me. And I think that's a really nice way for a relationship to blossom,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes we look around businesses and you sort of go, what does that person do? Or what are they for? When they start working with you and you go, oh, I get it now. Like I see how useful they are. So, but yeah, I mean, recruitment puts you in good stead for everything if you're good at it. If you're not good at it, then you could be in trouble.
Yes, fair enough. Do you feel that Foster Denovo has that core methodology of recruiting from within? So, or the organic growth? Is
Yeah,
that
I mean, we very much, and I put that in place when I joined, we very much would only recruit at a lower level.
okay?
And then we would grow and develop our people. So that's absolutely the stance that we have. I mean, obviously, there's a few positions where you're not going to have the internal, so we've, head of data and MI, we didn't have somebody. So you look externally. But generally, we will recruit from within,
Okay.
because it's loyalty, it's people know the business. We're really good at developing our people and actually going, do you want to be involved in that? Well, come and do a project here and see how you like it and see what, whether it works for you. So that is kind of a bit of our mantra, yeah.
No, that's great. And I think if I'm right, one of your strap lines there is culture is king. Is that
Mm.
correct? Tell
Yeah,
me a
no,
little bit. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, I mean, culture is absolutely king for me. And I think it always has been, and it always has been at Foster Denovo. And it's something I saw very, very early on. So when I first started recruiting advisors, advisors can be different and eclectic, and there's lots of different ones around. And, I used to say to Roger, I used to say, look, I'm not going to recruit like 10 of these guys. If they don't fit, if you've got one bad apple, it's
Yep.
not going to work for us.
Yeah.
And that also follows through with our admin, with our para planning, with our marketing. Like we are very much. I felt we've got platinum investors in people. Nobody else has that. It's 2% of companies have that, and that
Okay.
is really about not just saying you're going to do stuff, proving that you do it. Let's show me the stats, etc. So it's a really hard thing to get, but that is all around your people and your culture, and it is paramount. And I think one of the things that we worry about or can happen is people grow their business and they forget about the culture. And
Okay.
that's a problem, especially in our industry where people are acquiring all the time. If the culture doesn't fit, the acquisition won't fit, the people won't fit. Like it's so important in what we do.
So only 2%, you're saying only 2%
Mhm.
of advisory firms have IIP status. Is that what you're saying?
Of companies.
Of companies. Well,
Yeah.
wow, that's
IIP Platinum, which is the top.
platinum. Right. That's not a big, that's not a big margin at all.
No, no, it's really hard, and you have to go through the process every 3 years to
Okay.
revalidate, etc. No, it's quite impressive. Our NPS scores are really, really high for the industry. We really value what we do for our customers, but also internally. Like, because
Okay.
if internal doesn't work, external doesn't work.
No, I absolutely, I agree with that, 100%. But, for me, that I find that really fascinating because obviously investor in people, the nurturing, the culture that you clearly have there. Apart from that, which is, amazing, what else does the business do that, or provide or offer that other advisory firms don't, would you say?
Gosh, what do we offer? I
What's
don't
the,
know.
what is the USP of Foster De Novo, for example, if there is one?
I would think everything stems from our culture,
Okay.
honestly. I mean, that is the key thing. We are a facilitator in the business. We acquire firms, but we also look at organic growth. I would say we're a little bit the last man standing in London, is how I feel, because we're a shareholder-owned firm. So every single person in the business has shares.
Okay.
So from our reception and admin up to our equity partners, everyone has a stake in the business, and we're not a network. So it really drives home everyone's gunning for the same goals. And
Yeah.
that creates a really big difference, I think. Our
Okay.
partners, whether they're self-employed, employed, acquisitions, everyone is working towards the one goal. And I think that then flows out in everything that we do.
No, that's true. I don't think there are that many businesses operating that model.
No.
I know John Lewis does, but they're not
Hmm.
in finance. So,
No,
uh,
exactly.
but again, that seems to work fantastically well, I think. So yeah, that's great. So what's new at the moment for Foster
Mm,
Denovo? You mentioned a few minutes ago that you've brought in a data a
yeah.
data hire.
Hmm.
Um, what, what's new? What's new there?
So, gosh, where do I start? What's new? I mean, I suppose at the moment, and hopefully, people may have seen that we are very AI driven,
Oh,
or focused.
okay,
So we have gone, um, and this is my MD has driven this really well, and that's really her baby. We are now on a native AI platform, so we
okay,
are getting rid of, or we are about to get rid of our CRM completely.
okay,
So people talk about, an AI strategy. Well, you shouldn't have an AI strategy. You should have a growth strategy that involves AI. This is where
okay,
people get themselves wrong.
okay,
And we've done that. And we have looked at the business. We've partnered with Palindrome, who are phenomenal. And we are building this whole agentic platform for ourselves. So
okay,
it's very exciting. We are really ahead of the game at the moment, right? So there's no one else building this. There's no one else doing this at the moment. A lot of wealth management firms will say, we're using AI. And it's like, and they're like, well, we're using a note taker. It's like, okay. Whereas, and other ones will have a data lake, and they'll be pulling numbers from that, etc., or they'll have created their own ATR, but we're doing the whole gambit basically. So it's changing the way we do things, which is really, really exciting. We're not
Mhm.
going to be ahead, in the next 2 years. People will catch up with us. But currently, what we're doing is really, really, thinking forward. It's very exciting, as you might have told.
No, I can see, I can see that. I have a fairly divisive view on AI, so
Okay.
it was intriguing to hear you
What's
mention.
your view on AI?
Oh, I don't know if I'm allowed to say.
Your
So
podcast, do what you want, Lawrence.
I find it a distraction at best.
Okay.
I've always had a slogan for the last 3 decades that people are the source, technology is the tool. In other words, people come first.
Yeah, of
And I
course.
feel that with the advent of AI, and don't get me wrong, I'm well aware of how it can help and minimize those arduous admin tasks, of
Hmm.
course, and that is a tool. And I think that's about as far as I believe it should be implemented. I made a comment, or I wrote a post a while back where I said AI is akin to a primate using a rock to smash open a hard-shelled fruit.
Okay.
The rock being the AI, it's
Mm.
just a tool. Do you
Yeah, but
concur
that's
with
what
that,
it is,
or do you
though.
feel it's a little bit more?
No, I mean, you're not wrong. We will never, and it really frustrates me when people say, oh, it's going to get rid of all our jobs and, what's going to happen to advisors? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, advisors are just going to get better. Being a financial advisor has always been about relationships and trust.
Mhm.
That's where it is, okay? Now, yes, you will get AI that can do the technical side, right? But it doesn't have the judgment. It doesn't have all it has is the knowledge. It doesn't have the situation. So, we will always need to be doing that. And I think, any good advisor will just get more efficient and have more capacity. I spoke to one of my advisors the other day, and he's a bit long in the tooth, and he's great. And I said, "Oh, you're writing loads of new business at the moment. This is fantastic." I said, "What's going on? Not being rude, but what's happening here?" And he said, "Well, I've been using some of the AI kit," and he said it's just given me more time to really look at my clients' files before I go to the meeting and
Mhm.
really look at the opportunities and what we should be doing with them, as opposed to rushing from meeting to meeting, not having that time and missing what should be helping the clients. That's where AI is going to help us. The relationship will
Mhm.
always be paramount,
Yeah.
and we use the agents as a digital assistant, right?
Yeah.
That's what it does for you. So
Yeah.
I don't ever think that it will go any further than that. You always need people to talk about human in the loop, and even with compliance and all of that side of stuff, you still need to check it. Like, it still needs to be regulated and looked at, and it only knows what you're teaching it, right? So
Well,
I
that's it's.
don't disagree with you. I think we're saying the same thing, but we just, and I think it's interesting. I was talking to a chap the other day about behavioral influences and how people's psychology around investing, which I find fascinating. And he was saying, well, we need to be very careful about AI because it can't just make us more efficient,
Mm.
right? Because clients value the time and effort we put into things. Everyone does. Like, if I do something and somebody comes back to me within 2 minutes, I'm a bit like, have you done enough research on that? Do you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
if somebody takes a day or so to come back to me and says, right, I've had a look at this and I've done this report, this is where I am, I sort of go, oh, great. Okay. You've taken some time, you've taken some effort. So we need to make sure that what AI is doing for us is giving value to the client and not just giving us more time efficiency. That's the
No,
key, I think.
I agree. I do see that, but as you mentioned just a few minutes ago, that it has the knowledge, but it only has that knowledge because it's been programmed by people.
Hmm.
This is, and for me, the human element is something that, again, I bore people with all the time because, AI, it can't notice that slight facial expression
Yeah.
or, change in mood or, energy. It can't do that. Not yet anyway. It's, and so for me, certainly the business that I worked in and, et cetera, it is all about people. So, when I
Yeah.
hear AI, I do groan, I have to say, because it's just, I feel it's a distraction and people are concentrating too much on it rather than, for me, it is just a tool. So use it as a tool. And I do get that what you're saying, that the whole point of the AI is to reassign extra time so that the advisors can have more people time. But for me, that's just what an AI software salesperson would tell you.
Oh,
Because
I don't know, Lawrence. We're going to
it's
disagree on this one because I'm already
good,
seeing it in our
good.
business. Yeah.
Well, good.
And
That's the whole point of it. You're supposed to. As I
yeah.
said, it is divisive.
Mm.
So
No, I mean, I'm very excited about what we're doing. It's giving people, we're not making anyone redundant, no one's losing their jobs, etc. People are getting more interesting jobs. People are getting more human jobs. They're not doing mundane jobs anymore where they're chasing an LOA or they're doing that sort of stuff. Do you know what I mean? They're doing more client-based work. My boss will always say to me, our admin staff are called client experience execs. Okay. Nowhere in that title is the word admin. And it shouldn't be, because it's about client experience and delivering a really excellent service to their clients. That's what the AI is doing for them. Do you know what I mean? With
great.
my advisors, it'll get to a point where, the AI bot will be able to look into the system and say, this is some opportunities that you may have missed. These are some of the things. Well, how is that not a good thing? That it's telling you this is what your client might need. Have you discussed this with your client? It's not going and discussing it with your client, but it's giving you the
The
tools and the
prompts.
skills and the knowledge exactly of what you might be able to do. That's where it's going to come into its own.
Um,
Humans, I agree with you. Like, humans are always, it's the relationship, it's the trust, it's
it has
all
to
of
be.
that side of stuff, which, we've always called financial advisors trusted advisors, right? And that's what they are.
Yeah.
So that's never going to go away.
So do you feel that there will be, for Foster Denovo, for example, with the system that you're currently implementing or working on, will there be a ceiling of activity where you will kind of put the brakes on, or will you, again, embellish or, develop more the AI that you're currently working on?
Well, I don't know, if I'm entirely honest. I'm not as close to it as other people are, so I don't want to say. But I mean, I think we will continue in this vein until we get to where we need to be, and then
Okay.
we'll see the developments. I mean, I was talking to Ed Beckett, who created Palindrome, the company, and I said, "What's going to happen?" Because we've had this, in the last 2 or 3 years, this boom around AI, haven't we? It's this hype and this bubble that everyone talks about.
Yeah, of
He
course.
was saying that this has been going on since the 50s. It's just coming to the foray now.
Right.
And I said, well, what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years? And he sort of said, well, look, not a wild amount more. There's sort of a couple of phases. We've got, LLMs, then we've got agentic AI, and then we've got, one more stretch. But after that, he was like, I don't know where it's going to go from there, and will it go any further? So
Mm.
I think at the moment, Symphony, which is our core system, once it's running now, etc., and we're just looking at all the bots and everything inside it, we'll see where we go from there.
Fair enough. I just wanted to know if there was
Mm.
where do you draw the line kind of situation, rather than it, running away with itself, so
Yeah.
uh, that was kind of really the question. And in terms of, like you say, let's say the competitors, should we call them that, the other
Mhm.
advisory firms, you say you're a few years, 2 or 3 years ahead of them already. How has that come about? Because, as you said, there are larger, advisors out there. Uh, how has that come about?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is this is Helen's world now, so I'm overstepping slightly. But I mean, I think we were just ready for it. We got introduced to Ed from Palindrome, and he just sort of said, "Look, he's chosen wealth management because he felt it was an industry that was ready for more efficiency."
Okay.
Which absolutely is. Anyone that works in it will know that, right? Okay, it's so antiquated in the processes, etc. And I think we just had, or Helen had, the vision that let's go for this, right? And I think we are the size of firm, we're just under sort of 500 people, right? So we still have that sort of fleet of foot to be able to change quite quickly. And I think realistically now, you've either got the sort of huge consolidators where it's too much for them to try and embed something that's all encompassing, because you've got AR firms running around all over the place trying to get that into one place. I mean, you saw what Consumer Duty did with
Mm,
half of those guys, right? They were trying to pull
right.
everything together. And then the other side is that you've got really small firms, and do they have the desire to adopt it? Do they want to adopt it, etc.? So I think we're in a bit of a sweet spot with our size, but also because we had the vision, or Helen had the vision, to look at this and want to do it.
I see. I mean, that's an interesting point you make on the actual demographic of a business, the e.g. the size of it. I get, most, I think financial advisors it's a cottage industry. A lot of them are, one person outfits. So I imagine, their drive to implement something like AI or, that sort of thing would not be, I suppose, as focused or as driven as,
Yeah.
as Foster Denovo there. So, but it's interesting again, as you say, the larger firms. I imagine it would be a hectic, hectic scenario to try and, like you say, collate everything into one place. So,
Yeah, well, I imagine so. I mean, look, we all know. I mean, I've only got 91 advisors, and it's like herding cats. You know what I mean? So everyone's got a voice, everyone's got an opinion, etc. So when you're looking at some of these bigger firms, to try and get process and an adoption of a process
yeah,
implemented across various different businesses, and I mean, I don't know I don't know how those guys do it.
right. I was going to say, okay. I mean, your 91 advisors. It does say 123 on the website,
I'll
by the
tell
way.
you for why. Because we have two businesses. So we've got Foster Denovo Private Wealth, which
Okay.
is my area, and then we've
Okay.
got Second Sight, which is our employee benefits business, and we
Ah,
have advisors that sit within that business as well.
okay. So you don't look after that side of it, or
No,
you're
I
just
don't. So we've got a chap, Matt Mitten,
okay.
who is the equivalent on my side, who looks after Second Sight.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not only you are offering obviously support, compliance support as well to your advisors, is that right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Everything is in house.
Okay. So yeah, if they need something, they come to you.
Yeah.
So and you distribute that. H- How do you? I mean,
How does
obviously
it
you say,
work?
yeah. Well, you sound busy, and I just wonder. Listen, you got 93,
Yeah.
advisory,
Yeah.
partners to speak to and give a cuddle to. How are you
Yeah.
managing?
Well, I badly probably. No.
I mean, you must have very big arms to cuddle all those
Well,
people.
do you know what? And I always say to people, I always joke that I don't have any children, and now I've got 91. So do you know what? I love my job, and I think it is tough, but it's really rewarding. But we do look after them, and because we're not a network, because everything is in house, and that's sort of, as I said from the beginning, how my job came about. Because I recruited them, so I'm onboarding them, I'm doing their induction, I'm doing all of that. That they then I'm the person that they then come to.
Yeah.
So even now, they will come and say, "Well, I've got this compliance issue." One of my guys runs the concessions for a team, and they'll come and say, "Right, I need to do this." So it is busy, and yet we always want to be busier, right? And I think we're slightly different in the industry, saying what our USP is that we still look for self-employed partners, and we
Okay.
really, really want self-employed partners to join us. And I don't think there's a wild amount of companies of our size that are doing that, because a lot of bigger firms are converting people into employed businesses.
Okay.
Because obviously the revenue is better for them, right? That's the maths. Whereas what we look for is, an organic growth is absolutely king. But what we look for is self-employed partners that want to join us, grow with us, use our infrastructure, so they don't have to worry about all of the
Yeah.
admin and nonsense that goes around it. They can just go out and see their clients,
Right.
and then at some point when they decide to retire, they sell their business back to us.
Right.
So it's a really nice model, and we're constantly. I mean, I've just taken on two or three, but we're constantly looking for people that want to join that sort of place where culture is important, client is obviously at the center of everything. They want to have a voice as well. So I feel like with my advisors, I run lots of different forums, but we make sure that I've just put some fee changes in, but I don't just put a fee change in. I talk to everyone. I've done about 4 or 5 different sessions with them to get their feedback, to get their opinion. I've therefore changed what we were looking at. So I think a lot of advisors sort of go to a firm and they get told, well, this is what you have to do, or this is how it works. Whereas I think here, they're really part of what we do. So, as I said, I've changed the way I looked at the fee structure. I was like, oh, I want to do this. And I
Mhm.
spoke to 10 of them. And they were like, great. Then I had another cohort and they went, yeah, but have you thought about the pension side of it? And I was like, no, that's a really good point, actually, right? Let's have a revisit. So I think that's a bit unique as well, that people have the ability to, become part of everything that we do.
Okay. So what do you do then to promote the opportunity to get new advisor partners on board? What marketing? What what do you do to entice new partners to join, if any?
No.
Yeah.
No, I suppose I do quite a lot of external stuff.
Okay.
We
Such
do a lot
as?
of referrals from people. So obviously my current advisors, who do you know, where have they come from, etc. We use recruitment agencies, everyone does, to put out some attraction stuff, LinkedIn, it's all of the usual stuff. Like there's never a silver or golden bullet, is there, with recruitment? We all know that. There's never a way that is going to work. I tend to work off referrals quite a lot. So
Yeah.
when people have come and joined us and then they're happy, they recommend so and so and. Um, but yeah, I mean, anything you can do to help me, Lawrence, I'd be delighted.
Well, I do know someone who has a boutique event business, and they could potentially set you up with a very
Hmm.
nice venue where you could invite
Who would
potential.
that be, Lawrence?
I'm afraid I can't give that information out at the moment. And you could potentially invite a group of potential partners along and give them a
Hmm.
presentation. But yeah, that's just my opinion.
Okay, well, okay. Thank you. Noted.
And if you were to use this Priority Lane podcast as a platform to invite, new partners, what would you be saying? What message do you want them to hear?
Think I think the message would be that if you want to have a voice and you want to build your business without having to worry about all of the sort of gumph that advisors have to do. Onboarding a new client is a lot of effort. I was
Right.
talking to one of my young guys. He does about 250 of new business a year. And he's like, it's exhausting, Helena, because there's so much paperwork. There's so much to do. So taking all of that away, we offer admin and power planning. That's here. That's all done for you, right? So you don't have to worry about any of that. And it's not a network where it's somebody on the end of a phone that you'll get every 2 weeks. They're in the office with you. You know what I mean? Your
Yeah.
compliance is here. So everything is here, and it's immediate. So there's no waiting on things, etc. So if somebody wants to grow their business, join somewhere where they can have a voice, it's transparent. We're really, I mean, it's me, right? So we are straight down the line. There is no, and I think in wealth management, we have a bit of a bad rep about, saying that this is going to be the deal and then it changes and all the rest of it. I just don't partake with that.
Okay.
We're sort of very set in what we do. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's a really good opportunity and we're growing. And I've got young advisors, you get mentored by the older advisors, etc. You get shares in the business, so you immediately become part of the business, etc. So there's a load of stuff that I don't think a lot of other firms are doing. And training and development and all of that is all done in-house as well. So there isn't much that we don't offer.
It does. I mean, it sounds very comprehensive, and as you mentioned, there are obviously other firms that also, they have partners, etc., but
Mm,
perhaps don't offer the shareholder side of
yeah.
option, which I think is a great asset without a doubt. Well, is there any advice, for example, you would give to any youngsters or younger people, perhaps than
Mhm.
after coming into the industry?
It's a great occupation. And, I always think back to when I was young. I can't even say younger, it's just young now. And I always think back and I think, investment banking was where everyone wanted to go, wasn't it? That's what everyone wanted to do.
But
And
that was about money, surely.
yeah, but wealth management always had a bit of a bad rep, really, compared to, everyone wanted to be in banking. Nowadays, it's really changed. There's a lot more people going, wealth management is a great occupation. It's you give back. Like you feel it's not altruistic, obviously, because people get paid and all the rest of it, but it does give you that sense of you're helping people.
Yeah.
And it's really satisfying. And I don't know if people understand that. And I would say, we are so down on women in the business. And actually, I've got female advisors here and they are brilliant.
Yeah.
And people want to work with them and women feel more comfortable with them. And there's such an opportunity for women, especially in wealth management. And it's sad that you don't see more women going into it. And we
No,
need to change that somehow.
I agree. I've always championed that, and specifically, one of the main reasons is that, I'm not going to beat about the bush. Our female counterparts, you have a far higher level of empathy and communication skills than men. That's
Yeah.
just That's, for me, that's DNA. That's always been the case. So I do agree with you. And I think, I can't remember what the percentage was. I thought it was only something like 18 or 20%.
I don't even know. I don't even think it's that much, which is, when you think about, this sounds daft, but women outlive men as a
True.
as a general rule. So women are left with the money, right? So women like to talk to women. So there's a whole demographic of, when you look at intergenerational wealth, you look at all of this sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
I don't know what the issue is as to why more women don't want to do it, because they're so good at it. As you
And
said, the empathy,
agreed.
the relationship building, all of that is so much higher.
Yep.
And but it just doesn't seem to translate. How can we
Isn't that,
fix it, Lawrence?
no, but isn't that, isn't that going to be tricky though? Obviously, with the plethora of changes in inclusion and diversity
Hmm.
areas, suddenly, for example, Foster Denovo and other advisory firms, or any business, they can't just go, listen, we need more women.
Hmm.
Um, because you'll be seen as excluding
Yeah.
other parts of the community, which will then have a negative
Mm.
effect, which I find ridiculous personally. Because if you need to augment some part of, for example, the financial services industry where women don't make up a great percentage, why can't you promote that?
Well, I think, and we've had this in recruitment, and we have it in banking all the time where you need a quota, etc. I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is that women aren't going into it. They're not choosing it as an occupation or as a it just doesn't seem to be on their radar. Whereas when I talk to, I get loads of graduates and stuff emailing us and coming through to us and all the rest of it. I would say 95% of them are men. I've
Okay.
got my admin staff here in the office, and we offer, an academy, etc., where people can learn and develop and become advisors and all of that sort of good stuff. And I, in the last 3 years, haven't had any of our female admin want to join. And we are a female-led business. Our leadership team
Yeah.
is about 70% women. Now, our exco is 50-50. So we are very, very much driving from the front here, and yet still it's not enough. So it's a real conundrum, and it's one of those things I don't know how to tackle, and I really want to, and I don't know what the answer is.
Did you actually ask the question of those admin
Yes,
team who did? What was their
I
reason?
did. Oh, I don't know. They didn't really say anything. I was doing an induction, and I said, look, this is what we do, this is what we offer, et cetera, et cetera. And I said, put your hands up in the room because our demographic is more female than male across the board, right? And I said, put your hands up who would want to be an advisor in the future. 4 guys, 5 guys, none of the girls, even after I'd given them the spiel. And I'm the director of private wealth. And it just, it's baffling to me.
And they just didn't give you a response why they wouldn't want to be
No.
an advisor?
No, and I think it's sort of drummed into us a little bit, like, females tend to go down more the ops route, the management route, that side of things, whereas, guys
Marketing,
are
communications, etc.
exactly. And I don't know if that's just still so inbuilt at the moment that we really need to break that somehow. I mean, I think with the advent of AI coming in, I was talking to a chap who does recruitment for Goldman Sachs recently, and he said they now don't look for grads with economics, maths, anything like that. They look for the BScs, the BA honours, the geography, the crit. And he said they were interviewing people and they didn't, and they thought, my God, these are great. These are really great candidates. And they gave them a critical thinking test and no one passed because they couldn't use Claude. They couldn't use ChatGPT.
I wouldn't. I would fail horrendously.
But I
Um,
think that's that's where we're moving to. So I think actually maybe that shift will bring more women into the business because that is where we tend to go. I mean, I studied philosophy, for God's sake. Do you know what I mean? So I think that will help. But there's got to be something that we need to be selling it more. We need to be talking about it more. I don't know.
Yeah, clearly the visibility or the engagement or even perhaps the attractive proposition
Yeah.
of being an advisor isn't. It's not there.
Yeah.
And it's, I think in my head, being, the aged individual I am, accountants, financial advisors, I would have thought they were just bespectacled blokes at school who were good at maths. And I just found it a bit nerdy. And, obviously that's not the case.
Yeah.
and every individual I've spoken to on this podcast previously has said how people rewarding it is, and how engaged you have to be, and that they want to spend more time, belly to belly, effectively, with their clients, because that's what the role's all about, and they get great satisfaction from that. Perhaps it's just not been publicly put out there that way. It's still a fairly visually unrewarding position, perhaps, rather than being something that's attractive and look, this is a great career move.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
I don't.
we're hoping with a new style of academy that we're doing, where we bring people on, that we can change that. So we can start from the very, very ground up,
Yeah,
and bring people in to just start in that academy
yeah,
and try and get more females in that way, which I think will work. I know a few firms that do it and it does work for them, and they've got
right.
nearly a 50-50 split of advisors, but it's very much grow your own. Of course, it's a very long-term investment.
I get it. Well,
Yeah.
listen, Helena, thank you very much for your time. You've been a breath of fresh air.
Oh gosh.
You've been direct, which is always great for this podcast. So I thank you very, very much indeed for your time, and we will catch up in the future. I've been Lawrence Dauncey on the Priority Lane with Helena Bogdanovski of Foster Denovo, and I'm looking forward to interviewing my next guest very shortly. In the meantime, thank you very much, and have a great day, Helena.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Take care.
This episode is sponsored by My Brokers app, a white label app built specifically for financial advisors and wealth management professionals. If you want to know how you can have your own app exclusively for your business and your clients up and running by this time next week, visit mybrokers.app or download the free My Brokers demo app from your favorite app store.